very kind. She said you all came here because it's me. I think you all thought I was the Scottish author David Gemmell, who wrote all the sci-fi books. I'm one up on him. I'm still alive. He's dead. Now, just looking around the room, it's quite difficult to be sure, but you all look in pretty good shape. So I reckon all of you have seen the inside of a gym. And think about it. When we go to a gym, what can go wrong? Well, let's have a look. Lucy, help. Moved on one. Okay, some gym fails, some fails you can disguise, but some you can't. Let me tell you about mine. If you'd been at the Virgin Active Gym in Bryanston at 5 o'clock on the 9th of March last year, and you'd been watching the highly trained super athletes in the corner on the bicycles, you would have seen me. I was right next to them on the stepper machine. And the reason you would have noticed me, or might have noticed me, was because I suddenly keeled over and I collapsed in a heap between the machines. And as I fell, I banged my head and I bit my tongue. Now, I have a slightly suspect vascular system, so I happen to be on blood thinners. Well, you cannot believe the mess I made. Fortunately for me, a specialist physician was one of the highly trained athletes on the bikes, Dr. Mars Goldstein. I reckon his parents were smoking something interesting the night they decided to call him Mars. Anyway, Mars came across, and fortunately for me, despite all the blood, he spotted straight away that I'd had a heart attack. So with the staff, they started trying to resuscitate me. He injected me with adrenaline, which he had in a bag with him, and he compressed my chest, and they did everything they could. And just when they were giving up hope, they decided to use those little electric paddles that you see in the movies. They tried to jumpstart me. And the first time wasn't so good. Second time wasn't so good. And fortunately, the third time, I stuttered into life. The paramedics arrived, they strapped me to a stretcher, and they took me off to Sunninghill Hospital. Wait, Lucy. Here we are. Wait, darling. Sorry, I've got a clicker thing, but it doesn't work, so I've got to use my daughter. When I woke up, I looked around and I found I was in a ward. And I had all these little things, tags, stuck on me with wires coming from them and pipes coming out of my nose. And you can do the picture. And there I am. And I had a teddy on my chest. Okay, next one. And then there was a stocky guy in a white jacket, and he was listening to my heart with a stethoscope. I just closed my eyes and I lay there and I thought, what happened? I mean, all I could remember was going to gym. I couldn't work it out, so I opened my eyes, and this stocky guy in the white jacket looked at me, and in an accent I didn't recognize, he said, "Oh, so you're awake?" And I went, "Have I been asleep long?" And he says, No, just 3 days. I said, 3 days? What happened? He says, "Oh, my boy, you went to the gym and you had a cardiac arrest," he said, "and you suffered an ST experience." An ST experience, what's that? He said, "Sudden death." He said, "You died." He says, "But you were lucky." He says, "If you'd done that," he says, "you didn't die for long." He says, "If you'd done that anywhere else," he says, "if you'd done it in the car park, if you'd done it at home, if you'd done it on the golf course, anywhere else," he says, "you would have stayed dead and we wouldn't have met." I said, who are you? He said, I am Dr. Gebke from Eastern Europe, and I am now your cardiologist. I said, am I going to live? He said, you're going to be fine. He says, we've replumbed you. We've put stents in your heart, and you're fine. He says, I said, do I have to change my lifestyle? He said, you can do anything you like. He says, you can go to gym, but not for the first 6 weeks. You've got to acclimatize. He says, and after that, do anything you like. Go mad. He says, before, you were a loaded gun. He says, now, you're perfect. He says, you can even have sex. He said, if you can find somebody. Anyway, that's enough about my death. Let's talk about yours. Think about it. It is the single, after your birth, it is the single most important thing, single most important event left in your life. And paradoxically, when it happens, like your birth, you probably won't know anything about it. I mean, how many of you can remember anything except for him about your birth? The only thing I know about mine was that apparently I was such an ugly baby, the doctor slapped my mother. But imagine for a second that you knew the exact moment you were going to die. How much more do you think you would achieve before that moment? I reckon, I have no doubt, that if you knew exactly how many years, months, weeks, days, hours, minutes you had left, your mind would focus like a laser beam. And it would ensure that you got everything done that you've always wanted to do. I also reckon that if you knew exactly how many years, months, weeks, days, hours, minutes you had left, you'd soon turn into a gibbering idiot. I mean, just the thought of dying. But fortunately, we don't know when we're going to die, which sadly means that a lot of us don't live with sufficient urgency. Now, regardless, everybody in this room, regardless of race, sex, height, size, nationality, there seem to be a lot of strange nationalities in this place, but irregardless of all of this, we all have unfulfilled hopes and ambitions. We all have things in life that we want to acquire. We all have things we want to learn. We all have dreams of the kind of lives we'd like to live. Now, why is that? Why don't we have them all now? Or a hell of a lot more than we do have. I mean, where's your Porsche? I mean, why can't you speak French, Zulu, German, Xhosa? Why can't you play the piano? Why haven't you run the Comrades? Why haven't you climbed Everest? Now, before I died, it was over here, before I died, goals and ambitions and dreams, I had plenty. But after I died, I was shocked to find how many of them I hadn't got round to. Because I always thought I had forever. I always had all the time in the world to get them done. And the thing that bothered me the most was, after I died, was all the if-onlys. I couldn't get those words out of my brain. It's like a madman. They used to go round and round in my head, and I used to ask, if only, if only, if only I'd done more. If only I'd stopped telling everyone what I was going to do and done it. If only I had realized how indiscriminate death is, and it's hovering around every corner, just waiting to pounce. If only I hadn't waited for circumstances to be perfect, conditions to be perfect before I did anything. If only I talked to more girls. If only, if only, if only. I just couldn't get it out of my head. So I decided to do some research. Why, when I was faced with the end, was my biggest regret what I hadn't done? It wasn't. I don't regret the things I'd done wrong, the mistakes I'd made, and where I'd done well. That didn't interest me either. all that interested me was what I hadn't done. Now, in Australia, there was a nurse who worked in a hospital for terminally ill patients, Bronnie Weir, and she's actually written a book. But as she got these dying patients coming through, she asked them, what are your biggest regrets in life? And it's uncanny, almost without exception, they all said, we wished we'd done more of the things we wanted to do. None of them said, we wished we'd made more money. Of the top 10, there was only one other one that interested me, was they all wished they'd had more sex. But so I thought, well, I'm going to have a look at this. I'm competent at most things I do, and I'm not lazy. So what was missing? Why didn't I do the things that I wanted to do? What stopped me? Why, when I got started on a dream, did I lose interest and suddenly want to tidy my room, clean my car, organize my files? What was it? Why didn't I get on with the things I wanted to do? And I found that in every single instance, the dreams and goals I hadn't achieved, I achieved a few, but the dreams and goals I hadn't achieved had one single element missing. Now let me ask you something. What's the difference between doing a BA degree and learning to play the guitar? A BA takes you 3 years. Mine took 4, but 3 years to do a BA degree. How long does it take to learn to play the guitar? What's the difference between running the comrades and learning to speak French? If you want to qualify for the comrades, you've got to do it in under 12 hours. You've got to run it on the day that they run it. How long does it take to learn to speak French? And I want to ask you, now, I'll get my daughter to push the next slide. What's the difference between learning to do this? Push it, darling. Oh, it's not, yeah. That is a human flag. Next one. What's the difference between learning to do a human flag, something as ridiculous as that, and baking a cake? We know how long it takes to bake a cake. It's in the recipe. Put it in for 30 minutes. And there you have it. Our whole lives are run by timetables, deadlines. Everything has to be done in a certain space of time. Go to the train stations. Trains run at certain times. Go to the airport. They don't just put a plane on the runway and wait for people who want to go to London, and when it's full, fly off. It goes at a certain time. Even having a baby is a certain time factor. I mean, you can't get 2 women to have a baby in 4.5 months. So everything in our life is run to a deadline. Everything is controlled except our dreams and our hopes. They don't come with a when. And that's what happened to me. I looked at all the things I hadn't achieved, and there was one common factor. They didn't have a when. There was no when. And I find that if you add a when to what you're doing, everything changes. Let me give you an example, a practical example how when there's a when and when there isn't a when, it makes a difference. These are 2 of my books. This one's on how to give up smoking. And it came about, I was explaining to somebody at a dinner party how I'd given up, and they laughed and they said, that's jolly funny and it's clever and you should write a book. I thought it was a good idea, so off I went to write a book. The other one is the year's book, which I'd interviewed him and then he wanted to write a book, and Random House Strike gave me a contract. Now this one didn't have a when. This one had a when. This one I was told I had to write in 5 weeks because otherwise they didn't want it. They wanted to get it to the Christmas market, so I had to write it in 5 weeks, and I wrote it in 5 weeks. And it was #1 in South Africa at the time. This one took me 2 years. And the fact that I finished it was astonishing. I think in the end I had to finish it. But It took me 2 years to write a book which is at least a third thinner than this one. There was a funny thing about this book, which was when it came out, I was so pleased to see my name on a book. I went around and gave it to all my friends who smoked. And interestingly, every single one of them gave up reading. So ask yourself now, that's all very well, but why? Why does it work when you add a when? What's the difference? I'll tell you why. It's because of the panic monster. This is the scientific explanation. We all have procrastination in our DNA. To some degree or another, we all procrastinate. Some of us control it better than others, but all of us. I reckon any of you look back to school and you can remember bunking a class to get the homework done for the next class. Or go back to university and you can remember having a paper for Monday and pulling an all-nighter on Sunday night. And I reckon even now at work, some of us find ourselves Sunday night starting a project or a paper or a report that we knew we had from Friday, but we're only doing it on Sunday night. It's in our DNA. But you know what else is in our DNA? There's a compulsion in our DNA to do whatever it is we have to do at a certain point. When it becomes more uncomfortable to do what you have to do, when that's more uncomfortable than the pleasure you get out of not doing it, the panic monster arrives and he says, do it. And you know what? You do it. Think back on your life of the number of things that you've procrastinated on and put off and avoided, but in the end you did them. You never remember that you'd put them off or anything else. You just remember doing them. So the panic monster arrives. And there's your answer. If there is no when, he doesn't know when to pitch up. So you don't learn to speak French. You don't climb Kilimanjaro. You don't run a marathon. You don't learn to play the guitar. Because you never know when you have to do it. So, this is my message to you. Have a look at your goals and dreams. Whatever they are, it doesn't matter what they are. There's no right or wrong ones, but you must have them. I'm sure you do like I do. But when you get them, give them a when and watch the difference. Now I have, just because I'm putting myself up here and telling you what to do, let me give you one of my goals. And one of my goals is to learn to do the human flag. I want to be the oldest guy in town doing the human flag. Now the human flag doesn't come with a when. You go ask the guys at the gym, how long did it take you? 3 months. How long did it take you? 5 months. How long did it take you? 2 years. There is no when. You've got to give it yourself. Actually, I'm cheating there. Somebody's holding my legs out of shot. But that's the point, is you have to add a when. Okay, Goose, next one. That's it, thanks. So, this is it. To have the things you truly want, to realize your dreams and to live them, you have to give them a deadline. You have to add a when. Madam Toastmaster, thank you.